The cost of renting in Clare continues to climb sharply, with the latest figures showing new tenants are now paying almost €600 a month for a single room in a house. According to the latest Daft.ie rental report, market rents rose by 4.4% nationally in the first quarter of 2026, the biggest quarterly increase recorded since the series began in 2002. In Clare, the cost of a 3-bed home has risen by 8.3%, while 4-bed properties are now over 20% more expensive than this time last year. To discuss this further, I'm now joined on the line by the new president of Clare St Vincent de Paul, Gerardine Power. Gerardine, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks very much, Daragh. Thanks for having me on.
And Gerardine, you've recently taken over as president of Clare St Vincent de Paul, so congratulations is in order there.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I've stepped into the very capable shoes of Dennis Carty. I hope I will live up to his excellence.
I've no doubt you will, and we'd many chats with Dennis on this programme and many about this topic as well. And look, it must be very concerning for you as president of Clare St Vincent de Paul that actually across the market, when you look at 2-bed, 3-bed, 4-bed, up to 5-bed family homes, not in the last 10 years, just in the last year alone, average rents in Clare are up 15%.
Yeah, that's a huge rise, really. It's really causing a huge strain on the people on everybody. But more and more people are coming to us with problems and issues around the knock-on effects as well. I mean, if they come up with the rent, which they will often come up with the rent somehow because of the fear of eviction, but then there's a knock-on effect on the other bills and on their paying for food and all of those other things.
And I know St Vincent de Paul's primary role is to help people that are living in poverty, to help them try and escape that, to help them manage their bills. They don't necessarily advocate for a housing policy, but have you noticed an increased number of people coming to you struggling with their rent of late?
Oh, absolutely. People are really struggling. I'm actually based out in East Clare, and sometimes people will actually move out to the countryside because there's some reduction in the housing price, not much, but they may be a bit cheaper out in the countryside than they are in the town. But then you have the knock-on effect that you've moved away from the facilities and the schooling and those things that they wanted to be near. So then, therefore, they have other things to factor in, such as travel, for example.
Yeah, there's that catch-22 situation, because you can totally understand the logic in somebody, maybe even if they're working in Ennis or Limerick or Galway, that they might decide, well, look, it's much cheaper to rent, for example, if a property becomes available in Fecal or in Tulla, like you're situated in East Clare. You can take maybe the 10 to 15 minute journey to hop on the motorway. It might extend your travel, but you are paying less for rent. But then on that, of course, you've got your increased fuel costs. You might not have the childcare services available in your village. If you had to, I suppose, pin it down, Gerardine, what's the number one issue that people are bringing to you at the moment?
People are finding it difficult to find a rental accommodation would be one thing, and that is another factor in why they will travel far from where they actually want to be to try and get accommodation. And then just the huge increase in all costs of everything at the moment. The fuel bills, the heating bills, the electricity bills, and just the rising cost of food. It's just causing a huge strain on people at the moment. And the other thing then, of course, is that many of the people that we help are entitled to HAP payments, but the HAP payment hasn't increased since 2016. So the assistance that's there for them isn't keeping in line with the actual cost of living.
Yeah, and we often do see when this issue comes up, and we can see it from the Midwest Simons locked out of the market reports, or I should say the Simon communities locked out of the market reports, but they do obviously factor in Clare and Limerick as well, that quite often there's very few, I mean across the whole country, I believe the most recent stat was that there was only 14 HAP properties available, and that is even with local authorities such as Clare County Council having the flexibility to go 35% above stated HAP thresholds. So really you can see that the scarcity is there. Is there something, Gerardine, you think that could help renters at the moment, or is there anything you think that could be done to get more people into homes?
I do think that the HAP payments definitely have to be looked at. I would recommend too that anybody who is struggling that they don't go to the high interest loan people, that they come to they look for the help that's available. Come to the St Vincent de Paul, maybe go to MABS for advice on budgeting. But sometimes budgeting advice, if you haven't got the money for the bills that are going out, all that's probably doing is pointing that out to you, which you probably already know. But certainly try to avoid getting yourself into further debt. Engage with the landlords, engage with any of the fuel companies, any of the people that are putting where you have bill pressure on. Try and engage as much as possible, and do come to the St Vincent de Paul and look for requests for help.
Well, I think that message is very important to share, that while we might not be able to solve the long-term issues overnight, you just mentioned there that there are some things that St Vincent de Paul can do for you in the short term. So just to put that out there, Gerardine, if, for example, I or anybody else listening to this is struggling with their rent and might have a fear of the worst, what can SVP do for them?
Well, we help. First of all, when somebody comes to the St Vincent de Paul, we visit them because every case is unique. So we get the information from them and find out what exactly is their biggest concern, what is the biggest thing that they're struggling with. It may be that they are managing to pay the rent, or they're coping somehow with the bills, but they're then being left behind with food bills and they're struggling to eat. Or it may be the heating bills. Now, I hear we're getting a heat wave next week, so hopefully that will cause some alleviation on the heat bills. But over the winter, it's been very difficult for people. So once we visit and we ascertain what their needs are, we can help with vouchers, we can help with bills, and we can just help with advice as well.
Okay, we will go over to Shane Doody now, who also joins us. Shane is a Shannon Sinn Féin local area representative and is also a homeless support worker locally. Shane, your reaction to this average rents in Clare, according to Daft.ie, now coming in at €1,747 per month, which across our portfolio again is a 15% rise year on year.
It's absolutely insane, in my opinion. I mean, 10 years ago, renters in Clare could almost rent an entire house or property for what people are now paying for a single room. So single rooms going for, I think, €597 per month. A double room with an ensuite for €744 per month. So it's just absolutely crazy. And of course, like, the Daft report is coming out after the first month of the government's market rent reset policy, which has allowed landlords to raise the rents to market rents between tenancies. So we're seeing statewide that the market rents are jumping up to 7.8%. But there's like a massive knock-on effect to that. Obviously, we're in a cost of living crisis. The rents are going up. The cost of food are going up. We see that there's thousands of people currently in energy arrears. So I mean, it's just, the proof is in the pudding there when it comes to this bill, that it's really not working. And in County Clare alone, there was 125 notices of termination received by the RTB in the quarter one of 2026. And that's compared with 79% during the same period last year. So really, I think the proof is in the pudding. Like I said, this bill, the government said they wanted to strike a balance between, protecting renters and attracting in private investment. Here, they've done neither of those things. In fact, they've punished renters, and it's workers and working people who are going to bear the brunt of this.
Okay, and what are you hearing from those that you're working with in the homeless service? Maybe people that are trying to get a home, or people that have just entered. What comments do they pass, if any, about the rental market?
Well, anyone I'm speaking to just knows it's really difficult at the moment. It's really difficult, first off, to find a private rental, that you can afford, and then, on the other hand, if you're trying to use one of the other schemes like HAP, it's really, really difficult, especially in places like County Clare, to find a HAP apartment or a HAP house. So the kind of mood out there, I suppose, is a bit of disillusionment, and it's disappointing for people, and especially young people. I'm only 20 years old. Like, there's my generation now, we want to start moving on. We want to start getting out of the family home, but it's just not a chance for us. And like a lot of my friends now are immigrating to Toronto, Sydney or Perth, and they're realising that unfortunately, if they want to have that chance, that independence, and to get out of the family home, that lots of people are left with the only choice of to leave and to emigrate.
But I think it is fair to say as well, though, that a lot of young people want to emigrate and see the world, regardless of whether there's housing opportunities available for them or not. And even you can go to countries like Australia at the moment, where similarly you are paying equivalent very high rents for properties. But something, Shane, which Ronan Lyons, the author of the Daft.ie report and economist, said to Clare FM earlier this week, was that he feels a cost rental model could be something that would make a dent in Clare's housing market. Cost rental, of course, is where the rent that you pay is factored into the cost of constructing the home, and essentially it's provided by not-for-profit bodies like approved housing bodies or other government entities. Is that something that you feel could be a feasible solution?
Yeah, I think so. I think especially within the private rental market as it is right now, because it's so I suppose there's a lack of supply there is the first thing. But what the government was trying to do with that bill by bringing in private investment, it's not going to attract in institutional investors into places like here in County Clare. Yes, you might see some moderate developments in places like in the Docklands in Cork and in Dublin and stuff, but it's not going to attract in the investment that we need here in Clare. So that's why you need to work with small and medium-sized developers. You need to activate them, and you need to work with the approved housing bodies as well, and also the council as well. Everyone needs to be on board here. There's no joined up thinking. There needs to be joined up thinking here into making sure that people have a home.
And look, the council aren't here right now to defend themselves on that. I'm sure they would have a different view. But look, Shane, you say there's no joined up thinking. What's your evidence for that? What have you seen?
Well, the situation we're in right now, I mean, the fact that this housing crisis has been going on for so long, the fact that there was 125 notices of termination received just in quarter one, the fact that the rent inflation is the highest since records ever began, and that private rents are at their highest, and that we're in the worst housing crisis and homeless crisis, that there's the highest amount of children in emergency accommodation than there ever has been in the state's history. All of that is just damning evidence that there's no joined up thinking when it comes to solving the housing crisis.
Is there a solution to the problem, though? Because it is, is there a possible short-term one? Because we look at our construction sector, we clearly don't have enough labourers here to produce the output that we need. We are challenged with rising construction costs. When you speak to developers, they'll tell you that they want to see developer levies slashed, that would incentivise them to build more homes. We even did see when the eviction ban was in place, we had a high number of landlords even selling their properties to circumvent that, to get around that, because they naturally felt that wasn't an ideal situation for them. So, is there any silver bullet here? It seems that everything that has been introduced so far, for one reason or another, has its complications.
Well, look, what we need to be doing is we need to be trying to first off, the targets that the government is setting themselves are already too low, and we need to be ramping that up, and we need a lot more ambition when it comes to this. So first off, just in terms of the private rental market, Sinn Féin are calling for an immediate ban on rent increases, and a temporary ban on no fault evictions, and that has to be done. But in terms of getting that supply and building more houses, we want to especially work with the small and medium-sized developers, and activate them and working with them to build good quality homes for people. That's so important. But also working with the approved housing bodies and with the councils. So like I was saying, with that joined up thinking, all of that needs to be in play at the same time, And as well as other schemes such as tenants in situ, restoring funding to that. All of this is very important.
Gerardine, we'll give a final word on this one to you. for anybody else that is listening that is struggling with a number of bills, I suppose, how can they contact St Vincent de Paul? We'll get to it at the end, but what simple steps can they take themselves, maybe even with their own budgeting, that can help to take off some pressure in the short term?
Well, I'd say, to contact the SVP, I would say to drop into the shop there on Carmody Street and ask for assistance. There's a number, but I'm sorry, I don't know the phone number off the top of my head. How would they help? Just to try and, sometimes people let the bills and the problems get too far and too far on before they look for help. Look for help sooner, before, when you know that your income isn't matching your outgoing, then come to us for help before it gets too much. Sometimes people come to us with astronomical bills. It must have been the Cuban sandwich on my mind.
You're alright, it's still on my mind as well, Gerardine.
Astronomical bills. Try to get help quicker rather than let things build up. We're here, there's help here, and as much as we can, we will try and help you and guide you.
And the wonderful thing about the modern era is that information is always a click of your fingertips away. So I can tell you that the number for St Vincent de Paul is 065 682 4188 if anybody wants to contact you in your office there in Carmody Street.
Thanks very much for that, Daragh.
Not at all, Gerardine. My thanks to Shane Doody, Shannon Sinn Féin local area representative and homeless support worker, and to Gerardine Power, Clare St Vincent de Paul president as well. Thank you both very much for joining me this morning.